I don't know where I am. I don't know am I advanced? I haven't got a clue. I don't really care. I'm just very focused on doing the very best I can when I go into the gym. I know what I'm capable of. I know where my weaknesses are, and that's what I work on. Alphas, welcome back to the show. My name is Andy Naylor. I am founder and CEO here at Naylor Body Design and host of your Optimal Alpha podcast. And today we have another versus. And today we're doing full body training versus basically everything else. So full body training versus what we would say body part specific splits. So we can then say that everything else would be something like the bro split, chest day, back day, leg day, shoulder day, arm day, like training one thing, one part once per week. Or we could say push-pull legs, nearly upper lower, or I would say upper lower. It could be a little bit of a gray mark down the middle. But so we're talking about full body training being you go into the gym and you basically hit every muscle group while in the gym in a single session against, let's say, push-pull legs. That's pretty common. So you go in and do everything push. That could be triceps, chest, shoulders. You do a pull day, which would be everything back, and then a biceps, and then maybe you do a leg day. So that's a push-pull legs, and all the myriads of versions of that there might be. So we just want to have a little bit of a look at this and see if we can start to uncover what might be some of the positives and negatives of each. And really not with a view of me trying to tell you what would be the right one for you to do. I couldn't possibly do that, not knowing you, I guess, for a start. But really just to try and help you understand what would be the thought process that you might want to go through to work out which is the best for you. So we're going to look at just the simple positive and negative of each. These are not exhaustive lists. These are just the thoughts that came to mind before I pressed record, essentially. So let's look at full body, okay, to begin with. And let's look at the positives, some of the positives of a full body style training. So let's quantify this again. So let's imagine you go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. And every time you go into the gym, you do something chest, something back, something arms, something shoulders, something legs. Right? You do everything. The first positive that comes to mind is this is great for learning. Now, this could be getting back into training. This could be learning resistance-based training at the start. Why? Because you're going to be doing everything a lot. The analogy I give would be this. If I asked you to go away and learn to play the piano, now, logically, how often would you want to practice the piano to get as good as quickly as possible? Well, then the answer is as often as possible. So let's say you practiced the piano once per week. It's going to take you X amount of time to get to, I don't know, grade 1, 2, whatever, right? Whatever level we're going to set to be the goal. Let's imagine you then practiced once per day. You're going to get there 7 times quicker because your cadence is 7 times faster than the once per week. You're going to progress at a quicker rate. So in terms of just learning, full body is going to be great because you're going to be training every body part so many more times per week and so much more often on a quicker cadence that you're going to get used to it. And you're going to build up, let's say you're doing a lot of free weight work in these sessions, your proprioception, which is your body's ability to understand where in space your arms and legs and things are, is going to get better quicker. So in other words, your ability to have great form stability and therefore generate power will get better quicker. So it works really well for learning quick. It works really well if you're new to training. Yeah, specifically because of this. And also if you're getting back into training. So if you've had a period of time away from training, full body would work particularly well as an entry point back into training. However, it also works really well for very advanced people. Okay, I'll come back to this. It will generate really high frequency. If you're going in and say training your legs in some degree, right? There'll be different exercises. If you're in there 4 times a week, you're not going to do, there may be some crossover of exercises. Like there's only one type of leg extension, right? So if you're going to do that twice a week, you're going to do the same thing twice a week. But there's lots of different ways of doing compound work. That could be lunges one day, hack squat another day, Smith squat another day, and a leg press another. They're all different. But you're going to learn to use those pieces of equipment really, really quickly because the frequency is very high. Okay. But what it would mean is the volume would be generally lower per session. If you're trying to train every body part in a single session, you're not going to get a huge amount done on each body part. Now, that's neither a positive or a negative. It's just the reality. I would also say that full body training could be very time efficient because of the frequency. You can get in if you are good. Now, this is where it's very good for advanced people comes back in. So it works very well for entry people coming in and getting back into training because it's just a smart way to get things moving quickly. Then what happens is people tend to think that full body training is just for beginners. This is a really bad mistake. If I was to plan full body in for somebody, I know that I'm expecting them to come back and go, oh, Andy, I'm a bit more advanced than that. That's a bit for beginners. My answer is no, it's not. Most people think they're more advanced in the gym than they really are. Let's just say what it is. That's really the truth. Not most people, many people. If they've been an athlete all their life, which I hear a lot, Andy, I've been an athlete all my life. That doesn't mean anything to me, because what it means is someone probably trained 30 years ago in a way that probably supported some sort of team-based sport. Generally, that's what that means. If I was to dig deeper and someone says, oh, I've been an athlete all my life, what it means is they probably used to play football, basketball, baseball, soccer, something when they were at college. And now most of the people I speak to are, 40s, 50s. And maybe they've carried on doing bits and pieces, odds and sods, but consider themselves to still be an athlete. They're not. They're really, really not. Some people are, obviously. Most people aren't. So therefore, if I was to give that person a full body session, they would look down their nose at it. And I get that. I understand that. But the reality is if I was to come along now, I'm not saying that I'm advanced. I don't know where I am. I don't know am I advanced? I haven't got a clue. I don't really care. I'm just very focused on doing the very best I can when I go into the gym. I know what I'm capable of. I know what my weaknesses are, and that's what I work on. Does that make me advanced? I don't really know, and I don't really care. As long as I'm getting slightly better every day, week, month, year, okay? If I was to write myself a full body workout, I know that I would have to be on my A game to perform it to the level that I would expect from myself. Think about that. I would need to be able to walk into the gym, mentally connect with each muscle group very, very quickly to get the amount out of it that I would now require having trained for 20 something odd years. So my body requires a certain level of stimulus for me for anything to really happen. A high degree of stimulus, which means I'd need to get into each body part very quickly, very well. That is an advanced thing. Advanced as in time spent doing the right things, not just time spent in the gym throwing weight around, time spent doing the right things and focusing and drilling down on the details. Okay. So the negatives of full body, I would say it could be hard to become body part specific just by its very nature. It is challenging to get all these things done in one session. So therefore, if you're trying to hit every body part, let's say there's 5 body parts. What is it? So there's chest, back, arms, shoulders, legs. So we would split it into 5 major areas. Well, that means every session, only 1/5 of the work you do is on each body part. Therefore, you're limited in being quite body part specific. I would also say eventually it would be hard to progress everything, because you're training everything. So it's going to get quite hard to really progress everything. Again, I think a negative is people tend to think it's just for beginners. They'll look down their nose at full body training. Yes, it's great for beginners, and yes, it's great for people to getting back into the gym because the progress can be very, very quick in terms of relearning movements or learning movements for the first time. But then I think there's a middle group of people who it probably doesn't suit particularly well. And then I think you can kind of ascend back into a more full body training at the end. To give you an example, I'll tell you how I split my training up at the end, and I nearly do a full body session. I would also say it ultimately requires quite low volume, certainly per session, because again, 1/5 of the work you do is going to be per body part. So therefore, the amount of work that you can do would be less. You'd have to be very smart, first of all, with your exercise selection. Yeah, you need to choose the exercises with the biggest bang for buck and that you feel really well. You can't have any fluff. There can't be any wasted movements in a full body based sessions. They have to be movements that absolutely work for you specifically. I would also suggest, one, you need to be able to then get into the movement and connect with it very, very quickly, but also rest times. Distractions. You need to eradicate all of that so that you are hyper effective and efficient as you move through the session. alphas. I interrupt this show with a simple message. This show is here to benefit you and your progression to the best version of yourself. But not only just you, it's also here to benefit the people around you, your loved ones, your friends, other alphas in your vicinity. So why not do a really cool thing today? Something that I would thank you for and maybe someone else would. Share this podcast with at least one other alpha out there who you know would benefit from it. Why not share the information, share the ability for someone else to grow? I'm sure they would thank you. I 100% would absolutely thank you. This podcast only grows by our listeners, our followers doing amazing things like giving us 5-star reviews, downloading podcasts, subscribing, and then of course sharing it with other people. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Share it with one person, and of course drop us a 5-star review, download the podcast, and of course subscribe. And now back to the show. Let's look at body parts. This, of course, is now taken into consideration everything else nearly, rather than me just highlighting one particular thing. So, of course, we could be bro split, which is just the 5 things. So the 5 areas just trained once per week. So maybe you train 5 days a week, but you only hit chest once per week, back once per week. That's what we would call a bro split. Then you've got things like push, pull, legs, and all the variations of that. So what are the positives of this style? Well, clearly, by definition, it's way easier to become body part specific, because you could literally put a day in that's just specifically for, body part specific in its extreme would be the bro split, because you're doing everything once per week. I don't think that's smart for most people. We're now going from high frequency of full body training to very low frequency training everything once per week, which means over the course of a year, if you did the bro split and you trained chest once per week, you've got 52 chances to make progress. If I came along and gave you some degree of a push, pull, leg, upper, lower, which is what I do, you now train your chest at least twice per week. So I'm not going to technically make double the progress, but I have the chance to make double the progress because my cadence is double the speed of doing something once per week. It's very much easier to become body part specific. It's very adaptable because we've now got so many things we could do. With full body, you're doing full body. That's it. So everything else is very adaptable. Okay, so for example, my current setup is push, pull, legs, 1. Then I do arms. Then I do legs. Then I do a full upper body. So I do arms on a separate day because my arms are rubbish and they need a day on their own. And they also get done in the push and pull. So my arms are getting done 3 times per week, in the push, in the pull, and on their own day. So their frequency is pretty high because they can handle it. My legs take a relatively high amount of volume, so they get done twice. And then everything else is done twice. So because I do a full upper body day, that's chest, back, and shoulders. Brutal. I could change that however I want. So for a female example, there would probably be glutes in there maybe 3 times per week. So rather than just 2 leg days, maybe there'd be a 3rd leg day in there with lots of hip hinging, glute work, etc. It's very adaptable. I would also then say because of that adaptability, you can play about with more movements. You can bring in and try out and rotate in more movements to see what's working, what doesn't. But then also your volume and frequency can be very interchangeable. You've got so much you can do here. You're not limited so much. This also does cause a bit of a problem. I'll come to that in a second. Your frequency. So for example, my frequency on arms is 3 times a week. Well, I could make that 4 times a week because I could easily do biceps before legs. And I have done that. And that works particularly well. So if I wanted to do my biceps 4-5 times per week, well, I could just put biceps, a 4 sets of a bicep exercise before legs. And all of a sudden I've now got super high bicep frequency, but not impacting anything else. I would also say as a positive, this can probably be more enjoyable. If you're doing full body training, it takes a lot to get it right. That's a lot of effort. And not that's a bad thing, but most people either aren't at that level if they've ascended up, been training a few years, but they're not at the level to really go in and get everything out of a full body session. So I would then say bro split is super enjoyable to do. You go in and absolutely smash the living hell out of one particular body part, and it generally feels pretty good, and you'll probably get a shitload of DOMs, and it's all great. Is it the most effective? No, for most people, because the frequency is low once per week. I would say that the other variations, push, pull, legs, upper, lower, whatever the variation of that, can be enjoyable because you've got more flexibility. And also say because of that, it fits most people in most situations. What would be the negatives? Right. because of all of the options that you now have, I would say that most people, it can become very overwhelming to be able to program this themselves. And most people just don't know, through no fault of their own, they don't know how to program training properly for themselves. And that's understandable, because it isn't straightforward to get it right, because it's kind of different for everybody, because everybody's got a different amount of time, different amount of kit, different injuries to work around, different body parts that they want to be specific on. Most people don't really understand exercise selection correctly and exercise order, and then obviously exercise execution. So we've now got so many variables, which gives us so many more options, but with those options comes overwhelm. Because then what people tend to do is go online and they're trying to find plans and programs, and there's the answer to every question that we could ever possibly ask is online, but with no bloody context. So it's overwhelming. So I think most people get themselves into a problem of thinking that they have a plan because they've got stuff written down on a page, but is it a real plan that's going to work for them? That they know when something stops working what they're going to do, and they know why everything is where it is. Why have I done push, pull, legs, arms, upper, lower? Why? What's the reason? How do I expect to, how quickly am I rotating round that? What's the overall volume per body part per week? How will I increase that? These are questions that are very difficult to answer. And I think it can lead people down a bit of not ending up really knowing whether they're doing something right or wrong. Again, going back to the people who think they're too advanced to do full body, so they get into maybe being misled by. Certainly, I could say, if you think back far enough, when we used to have bodybuilding magazines, and each week a magazine would come out, and it would have your favorite IFBB pros apparent workout. Well, of course, that magazine lasted for a month, so the next month out came a new workout, and everyone, I'm not saying everyone, but people would move to that. So people would be changing, and very, very, very rarely would you ever see a workout in any of those magazines, or even now where someone's doing full body, because everybody knows that full body is just for beginners. Whereas technically I would say that it's not. It's just really bloody hard to do at a high advanced level. So yeah, to go back. So, look, there's no wrong or right here. These are just thoughts and things to consider as you're laying out your training, because although most people would say, I just need to get my nutrition in place and then I'll get in shape. Yeah, nutrition is important. But if you want an actual physique that's fit for purpose, well, then training is the stimulus that you require to build a physique. I'm not talking about getting hench and being a bodybuilder. I'm talking about being fit for purpose, having a body that looks good, feels good, and works well. Yeah, which means has a degree of lean muscle mass. Yeah, so that's helps with metabolism, helps with longevity, helps with support and strength and mobility around joints in the long term. Also, yeah, looks pretty good when you take your top off. Nothing wrong with that. Don't ever worry that you feel that you're training for vanity. Replace the word vanity with self-esteem. That's just solved that problem, hasn't it? No one would ever wish another person low self-esteem. People think there's some issue with vanity. I don't even think there is. I just call it self-care. As long as the vanity doesn't become arrogance, that's where people get themselves a little caught up. I'm going off track here, but you get what I'm talking about. So the way my training is set up is it's push, pull, legs. Then I take a rest day. Then I tend to do something like arms, or sometimes it's the upper body session. Then it's the other leg day. Then it's the upper body session. And then I rotate around. But ultimately what I'm doing is, so think push, pull, legs. And really what I'm doing is just upper, lower with an arm session. And sometimes they might be in a slightly different order, but over the course of a week, I rotate around all of that. Push, pull, legs, an arm day, an upper day, and a second leg day. So my frequency is really high. I get to move exercises in and out quite a lot. When I created that program, what I started was with what was the most important to me. Where did I need to put the most effort into? And that's pretty balanced if you think about it. 2 leg sessions, chest gets hit twice, back gets hit twice, arms 3 times, shoulders 3 times. That's quite balanced. But the things that are getting hit 3 times recover well. Like side delts, arms, those things recover pretty quickly. So they get hit 3 times. My chest, I could do more often, and I probably could do with. My back's not too bad. My legs, really, I could get away with once a week, but I just really like training them. The next thing I then did was think, okay, well, how many working sets do I need per body part? So I created a little Excel spreadsheet, and I just kind of go, okay, here's push, here's pull, here's arms, here's legs, here's the other legs, here's the upper body. Here's the exercises I would expect to do because I already know what exercises I wanted to add in at the starting point. So how many sets am I going to do per session, per body part, to get to the end of the week and go, okay, well, maybe I'm averaging about I don't know, 15 to 25 sets per chest, 15 to 25 sets per back, whatever the number might be. But at least then I'm tracking the actual volume and I'm tracking the frequency. Now, that all can be a little bit confusing, which is why having all these options can be a little bit confusing. That's also where getting a little bit of help helps. Now, I'm not saying that needs to be us. It really, really doesn't. But if you don't have a handle on this and know why you're doing what you're doing, then that's not a plan. That's not a plan. That's just stuff written on a page that you hope is going to work for you. And it probably will work for, a degree of time. But if you really are looking to optimize and end up with the best result possible for the effort that you've put in and the time that you've invested into your training, then getting a handle on understanding these things and making the most of them actually makes sense, doesn't it? It'd be like running a business without having a profit and loss sheet. You haven't got a clue what's going on. This is exactly the same thing. So look, those are my thoughts. I don't think there's a better or worse when it comes to this. I would say for most people, full body works at the beginning, possibly somewhere towards, when actually quite advanced and able to go into it. It's brutal doing it that way. And I have actually certainly used, now I think about it, I remember doing, I think it was a Lyle McDonald. I can't remember the name of the program, but it was full body training for an early part of the week while depleting in carbs. And then when you put carbs back in at the end of the week, you did some body part specific. I can't think of the name of the program. It's going to come to me when I finish the podcast. Oh, it's not in my mind. So it's absolutely brutal. I don't know if I ever shredded fat quite so quick. So there was actually a way of using both in 1 week. It was absolutely brutal. And the name still doesn't come back to me. But what I'm saying here is I had to really be focused when doing these full body sessions because it's really, really difficult. But it is actually a really good way if burning fat is part of the goal. Why? Because you're really working on every muscle in every session. So maybe give full body a try. If you've been doing body part specific for many years, don't just think it's for beginners. Go and give it a little try. 4 times a week. I wouldn't probably do it 5 times a week, but I think 3 or 4 times a week would work particularly well. And then really see if you can get good at it. Because if you get really good at it and then maybe go back to body part specific, I can't see how you wouldn't ignite more progress out the back of that. I hope some of these thoughts have been useful. I've enjoyed going through this. I'll come back with some more verses in the future. But for now, my guys, over and out.